into a March Madness edition of Floyd Street's Finest. It is March 1st. Alongside Coach Mark Lieberman, I'm Jack Grossman. Welcome to the great month of March, a month that, well, at least in Louisville, used to mean a lot of fun and excitement. Maybe not this year. Of course, there's the probable the probable impending coaching search that is quite possibly coming. Eric Crawford had kind of the tidbit on that, say, 2 more weeks, 4 more games is kind of where they're at with Kenny Payne here going forward. But Coach, Cards lose to Duke on Wednesday night. We'll get to that and some stuff there. But I wanted, since it is March 1st, that's a good excuse for us to, kind of sit here and talk about a couple of things that have been very pertinent in the college basketball world that I kind of would like your thoughts on. And I think you might disagree with me on a couple of these. So I think we could have some fun with that. First thing, obviously Louisville played Duke on Wednesday. Probably the number one storyline from that game had nothing to do with the actual contest. Duke obviously rolled Louisville, but was Kyle Filipowski returning from the court storming injury suffered against Wake Forest this past Saturday. Coach, what are your thoughts on just this whole fiasco with the court storming stuff and where the sport has kind of just exploded the last couple months over court storming and all that?
Yeah, I might be old school when it comes to all of that. I love the pageantry, just all the stuff that goes along with college sports, and that stuff is really cool. Having said that, the court storming. Having said that, you look at the students now, and I'm more concerned for even student safety, because it's not like you're rushing to your team and trying to lift them up. Everybody's just holding a camera up in their phone, and it's TikTok and it's images, and I'm more worried about the students getting trampled because they're not paying attention to anything that's happening. Because if you look at the close-up video of even the Wake Forest Duke game, it was just every single student wasn't concerned with the victory as much. It was more of, okay, let me get myself a TikTok with this or that. So they could get trampled by a 6'9" power forward, and then that becomes an issue. It's going to stop. They're going to put an end to it because of what happened. And obviously with Filipowski, it was something very minor, but you were just, you're playing with fire when it comes to all that, because like I said, whether it's a student gets injured or somebody else, it's just the way of the times, Jack. Am I for it? I don't have a strong opinion because I love it. I think it's part of the stuff that just is magical about college sports, but there are some major risks involved.
Yeah, that's I look at it, it's something that's incredibly fun. I think it separates college sports from the professional game. It's a very unique feeling of storming a court, or in college football, storming a field. Chris Russo brought up a great point a couple days ago on First Take, saying, the Duke fans weren't complaining when they had thousands of fans mobbing the football field when they beat Clemson last year, which is true. And they didn't let Clemson get off the field or anything like that. But to me, I think there's a very simple solution that everyone blows everything out of proportion, because that's what we do in society in 2024, and goes from 0 to, you can't do it. Greg Burns, the Alabama athletic director, saying you gotta, forfeit the game if your fans storm the court, which is completely idiotic. I mean, people saying that they should arrest fans who storm the court. Stupid. Here's all you have to do. I was at a Georgia Tech North Carolina game about 6 weeks ago. Georgia Tech wins the game, upsets then I think they ranked 3rd North Carolina. And a crazy thing happened. Security kept the fans from storming the court until after North Carolina left the floor. It only took 15, 20 seconds. And then once they got into the tunnel, everyone stormed the court and had their fun. Creighton, UConn, this got publicized when Creighton upset UConn a couple weeks ago. They roped off a section of the court to where both teams could shake hands and UConn could get off the court safely. And everyone stormed the court immediately. Why don't we just do that? Why not just say, give them the 15, 20, 25 seconds, whatever they need to get off the court. Also, it appears like someone's doing lawn maintenance outside my apartment here. I don't know if that's coming
Can't
through on
hear
your
it.
end at all.
No,
All
it's
right,
not.
perfect. But why not just give them a very quick amount of time? You can skip the post-game handshakes. No one needs them in this spot. Just get the team off the court and say, then the students can go have their fun, storm the court, and we can stop blowing this way out of proportion. I mean, you would have thought Cal Filipowski had his knee cut off the way people were talking last week. And yes, that was incredibly scary. That could have been really, really bad for both Filipowski and Duke. But the fact of the matter is, he came back and played against Louisville and had 9 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists in 30 minutes. I mean, I do feel like it's been. I get it that there's real risk there, and people did kind of the same thing with Caitlin Clark earlier in the year. But I think there's very easy ways to get around it to where you can still, let the kids have their fun and be able to have those magical moments that, a lot of schools that's their highs. I mean,
look, I'm not, like I said, I am not, the Grinch here as far as this goes.
Oh, I know you're not.
And I know your point. And I heard whether it's the shot clock, put a shot clock on and it runs down.
Yeah, I know Doster had that right on the national show.
Right. But there's so many X factors. There is. And, you might have not enough security at one of these games, and you might not be able to control every variable with every fan. And all of a sudden they storm before the shot clock is run out. So, yeah, it's perplexing because, you see the pugnance and everybody's like, well, it's like all good things come to an end. And unfortunately, I think it is. I do not disagree with some of the things you're saying, but I think there's too much liability in 2024. Unfortunately, that's what the world has become, that, it could become litigious if one student is, and I'm not even talking about the players. I'm talking about because it's changed and you're getting on the court. And I'm telling you, it's a different animal. They're more concerned with let me get my time on the camera and whatnot. So, Jack, unfortunately, I think the pageantry of storming the court is going to come to an end rather soon.
Where do you stand on the people that politic? It's a similar argument, but same broad topic. I know Louisville fans a lot of the times traditionally have acted like we're above storming the court. Like Kentucky fans do the same thing. And people criticize teams like, oh, that team was only ranked 12th in the AP poll. Why are you storming the court against them? Where do you stand on like when you should storm the court?
Well, I just think it's any time that you have a fan base, and it's really student fan base that is really excited about it, and you upset a ranked team. Like you're really not going to probably see when I was at Louisville. I mean, number one, the fan base is a lot different. There are students, but it's more of an older fan base and whatnot. So they're more interested in, okay, let's go celebrate, go get a beverage, and go somewhere in the good old days of Louisville basketball. So that it depends about your fan base, but I think when teams aren't accustomed to getting those big wins, and you beat a top 5 team, and you have a lot of students at a game, and you've had a theme maybe, and so you get even more of the student body out there. Of course, you're going to have that situation, and you're going to have them storm the court. But some of the blue bloods, you just don't see it. But like even in Kentucky's situation, and just like Louisville's, you have a different fan base. So you're probably not going to have no matter how big a win it is.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I always look at. I mean, the one time Louisville did actually have somewhat of a court storm was the last game in Freedom Hall. They upset Syracuse, huge game, and it's still just a little pitter pattering of maybe 100, 200 students on the court. It's just not the same thing as Wake Forest this past week with a huge ass crowd with all that stuff. I honestly, I get sick of people trying to quantify the court storming or like the field rushing and for the football counterpart, just because I used to be that guy, growing up in Louisville, kind of having that mindset that going to Indiana, a school that, obviously has the famous court storm against Kentucky and has rushed the court a couple other times. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but I remember my sophomore year, they were playing Michigan State. I was sitting this was before I was actually covering the team. I was actually just there as a fan, and I'm sitting in like the 8th, 9th row in the bleachers behind one of the baskets, and they're about to win the game, upset a Michigan State team that was going to make the final, that ended up making the Final Four that year with Cassius Winston, Kenny Goins, Matt McQuaid, those guys. Everyone's talking about, we're going to storm the court. I'm sitting there like, why? You're Indiana basketball. This Michigan State team's good, but like, you've beaten them before. What are we doing here? But you know what happened? A weird thing happens. The game ends. I wasn't going to be the only person to not storm the court. So I got to be like, a lot of that stuff just kind of get thrown out there. And I think it's more so just college kids having fun. And I think
that's a lot of it. Sure.
Whatever aspect you look at the court storming stuff, I just think it's part of, that experience of being in college when you have a big win and to be able to do that, to have fun with that. So I don't know. Just it's been a hot button topic. So I want, especially with Louisville playing Duke, and it actually, ties into U of L a little bit. But since that was the only thing people really cared about, that Louisville Duke game on a national level. For number 2, I want to get your thoughts on the 96 team expanded tournament. That's been very much a hot button topic as well the last months or so. The thought of expanding the basketball tournament. It is March Madness now, so it's going to take the forefront. The classic 68 team field again. I have a thought on this that I feel like no one's talked about. But before I get to that, I want to see what you think on just the thought process of expanding the tournament. If so, how many teams? If it's a good idea or a bad idea, just all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a position where I'm sorry about that, Jack. Yeah, I like the field as it is. I think it brings drama. I think it brings excitement. I think it brings, okay, you've got to do your part to get in. I think the field is great. I mean, we want to change everything. Everything wants to, with expansion and whatnot. I think it's. I think the field, how it's presented, since I was a kid, and it was, now it's the 68 and you have the first 4 and whatnot. I don't think it needs to go on, but I'm very excited to hear what you've concocted here about the
First of all,
I'm
pleasantly surprised that you don't want it expanded, just because coaches seem, more often than not, the coaches have wanted to see it expand, which I don't blame them, from the standpoint of, there's more spots. You have more of an opportunity to make it. And if you make the tournament more often, you're less likely to, face the hot seat and then those types of things.
I understand that part.
Things as well.
I understand. I just don't want to dilute what we have.
Exactly.
I like how it's set up, and I think you still have those underdogs. So I still think the number's fine. But I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Because I'm right there with you. I am incredibly against expanding the NCAA tournament. It's absolutely perfect the way it is. And the thought process I have is, one of the things people use to say, oh, we can expand the tournament, we can get more, viewership, we can get, extend March Madness by an extra week or two. I just don't think there's that much of an appetite for the general sports fan for more March Madness. The thing I look at is, since 2011, we've had the first 4. Which has kind of been this nugget thrown out there, this test piece to see if people want to watch more NCAA tournament basketball. And this isn't, the top of the line teams we're watching. These are the type of teams that we'd be getting in if we expanded the tournament either to 80 teams with just more first 4s, or 96 with another 32 teams. And I look at it, here's the first 4 ratings. The 2021 COVID tournament, where they did the first 4 on the same day, and they had 2, very traditional powers, which is unusual for the first 4, UCLA and Michigan State playing in a game. That's the highest rated first 4 ever, and that's at about 2 million. It dropped to 1.7858 million the next year, and then again to just 1.38 million in 2023. And that's pretty much where it's been traditionally, somewhere around the million mark to 1.3, 1.4 million. You compare that to the first weekend of the NCAA tournament and the rest of the NCAA tournament. Since 2013, the NCAA tournament on average has had 9.4 million viewers per weekend. It just pales in comparison to what the actual bracket does. And for me, this thought process of, you're going to add in a bunch of worse teams, I have thoughts on that also, because it was really when ESPN showed the bubble graphic of here would be the last 4 in, first 4 out if we're going to be, and I got some numbers on these teams also on if it was a 96 team field. I'm like, we don't need this. We don't need. No one's asking for, LSU or Maryland or Miami to be in the NCAA tournament this year. And I think if you were to ask, the coaches of these teams and say, and put them on a lie detector test, they would probably say, we're not NCAA tournament teams. There's
something you have to earn. There's something that's part of it. And so, and by expanding and getting some teams in that have not done, what they were set out to do, like you said. And then there's the NIT. So you have a week of other basketball that's going on as well. So it's not like, you don't have a chance to compete for a postseason title. So yeah, I think it's at a good spot. I wouldn't expand.
Yeah, but let's look at this here, because I compiled the numbers. I might as well use them, right? The last
you did your homework. Let's do it.
The last 4 in, and this was on College Game Day last week, so it could have shuffled a little bit, but the last 4 in they had was Maryland, Washington, VCU, and LSU. Those teams, first of all, in the net are 69th, 71st, 73rd, and 89th. They have, just in terms of, before you look at like the quads or anything else, here are the records. I mean, 15-14, 15-13. VCU is 19-9, but a 9-loss team from the Atlantic 10. Really? That's what you want? And then 15-13. They in quad 1, 2-9, 1-7, 1-3, 2-8, 4-7.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. They have three of the 4 teams have a quad 4 loss. All of them have a quad 3 loss. These aren't the type of teams we want to put in the NCAA tournament. You look at Miami, a team that I would argue has underachieved more than anyone else this year. Yes, they have a crap ton of talent. But the fact of the matter is, they're sitting here on March 1st, 15-14, with a 2-8 record against quad 1, 2 quad 3 losses, and a quad 4 loss. I don't care
loss to Louisville.
A home loss to Louisville is one of those. I don't know if that. I'd assume that's the quad 4 loss, but they haven't done anything that shows you, other than just looking at the talent, what they're on paper, and say they're an NCAA tournament team. They've played out the season. They've had their chance, and they could do it. So why would we reward them with a berth into a 96-team tournament that no one's going to watch the early rounds anyways? Plus, there's the standpoint of, again, another kind of sidetrack to it. Sankey and the Big Ten commissioner, they've kind of thrown out the idea of trying to go with the automatic bids if they keep the tournament 68. That's terrible also. I mean, that's what makes the NCAA tournament so great. The fact that you can get a St. Peter's or a Fairleigh Dickinson or, George.
Yeah, that's where I'll have an issue. Yeah. I have an issue. They've set it up where if you win the conference, and, I coached at Southeastern Louisiana, where we're 1 game away from making the tournament. So, that's the excitement for some of those levels. Yeah, you shouldn't have to. If you win your conference tournament, you're in.
The beauty of college basketball to me, and where it's been juxtaposed for so many years to college football, is that every team actually has a chance in college basketball. And if you're not in, first of all, just win your damn conference tournament, which I've had thoughts about that for a long time. I think it would value the regular season more. They're not going to do this because of how exciting Champ Week is and how much fun Champ Week is as a really great lead into March Madness. But I think it would be better for the mid-majors if they were to take the regular season champion instead of the conference tournament champion. It would be a better barometer of who the best teams are and be able to get more of those Cinderellas out. But at the end of the day on that one, you're not going to sacrifice the excitement of Champ Week. And I understand that. And unlike the first 4, people actually watch Champ Week.
You're not going to get me to flip on that. So
yeah.
You got to win the conference tournament. It's unfortunate that now they're talking about not a guarantee in the NIT for conference champions.
Yeah.
So that's an issue for me as well. So
yeah. And for those who don't know, they're taking away. It used to be if you won your regular season in a conference but didn't win the conference tournament and missed the NCAA tournament, you'd get an auto bid to the NIT, and that is no longer the case, which I think is equally dumb because, whereas I'll give you an example this year. Indiana if they end up being an NIT team, which, first of all, if there was a 96 team tournament, I still don't think Indiana would be remotely close to it. That's how bad they are, which means they probably wouldn't be an NIT team either, but, maybe they would put them in just because, name brand, all that stuff. But whereas that doesn't really mean too much to an Indiana, that would mean a lot more to if, St. Mary's would obviously get an at-large bid if they don't win the WCC this year, but if St. Mary's for some reason didn't get in, if they didn't win the WCC, that would mean a lot more to a program like that. Like, there's much better examples than St. Mary's, like a Belmont or, just any mid-major school you want to use. I mean, Bellarmine, when they won the A-Sun tournament a few years ago and they weren't allowed in the NIT, that was a big deal for them. That would have been really, really cool. Obviously, they should have been the NCAA tournament, first of all, but then they tried to, get into at least the NIT. But that's another story for another day. But it means a lot more to these mid-major programs than it would to, like, a Maryland or a Miami or an Indiana, someone like that, to where, I don't know. I don't think that helps anyone. But for me, my big thought process was no one really talked about is, would people even watch the preliminary round games if they expand to 96? I personally don't really think so, because no one's watching the first four now. And the first four hasn't exactly, of the 13 years we've had the first four, how many classics have we had? I mean, there was the Rutgers Notre Dame game a couple years ago. Other than that, have there really been that many great games? I mean, it's just kind of there. I mean, they don't lock the tournament brackets for the bracket pools until Thursday at noon anyways. The first four is just, it doesn't even count for the bracket pools or anything like that. So I don't see
for the
why
lower level some of those games. I mean, you're gonna have some of the teams that just got in, but then you're also gonna have like our conference where you have a Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and the only reason people are tuning in is because they're wagering on the game for that standpoint. So yeah, people aren't tuning in to watch Texas Southern versus Texas A&M Corpus Christi, but there, the ramifications of that is it's people, the only reason you're going to get 85% of the people watching those games is for gambling purposes. The other 15 are just basketball junkies. So that's what it comes down to. But if you add the teams like you're saying, then it dilutes a lot of what happens in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, which hopefully, I'm not very optimistic because of where college sports are and who runs college sports. And that's not just the NCAA. I'm talking about the college commissioners, because they're really the ones that are pushing for this more than anyone. It seems like, especially the SEC and the Big Ten, and to where I'm really hoping it doesn't happen, but I'm not holding my breath. I'll put it this way: if they do expand, hopefully it's quote unquote just to 80, so that they can still keep kind of the same timeline and everything that they currently have. But
their agenda is just to get those teams in, get more money for their conference, and that's really the bottom line. So
yeah, but no matter what happens, don't take away the automatic qualifier. But last thing before we get to some actual Louisville stuff, the ACC and the Big 12. I know our Luke Hancock's had a lot of thoughts about this on the ACC network. Brad Brownell had some quotes earlier this week. Terrence Oglesby in the Field 68 has been pioneering this. Just the kind of rivalry between the two conferences that has formed in terms of the ACC people being mad that the Big 12 has quote unquote gamed the net. It's a complex one for me, because it's been brought up a lot that the Big 12 has kind of figured out that you can play a bunch of really, really bad teams and be able to inflate your efficiency numbers from that standpoint. And then you're just playing each other in conference play. But at the same time, you look at it, there's just the eye test to me matches that the Big 12 is a better conference, and it's not particularly close. And to me, I kind of use the metrics to back that up.
Yeah, I would disagree with you, and with that, you're eating your own, and how the Big 12 is just game in, game out. You're looking at these games every night. Just watching Baylor at TCU, and Baylor coming off a 3-game losing streak, TCU having beaten 2 top 15 teams at home, and they lose at home by 12. And every game in that league is a monster. Where you're not going to have the same thing in the ACC right now. It's top heavy. And the Big 12 is deservedly so the best league out there.
Yeah, and I look at it, the thing that really separates it for me is we can look at it and say, yes, the Big 12 has 5 teams in the top 20 and Ed, 10 in the top 45. The ACC only has 4 in the top 45. Virginia, for what it's worth, is 46th. But for me, it's less about the top and more about just the cupcakes at the bottom. I mean, the ACC has 8 teams outside the top 75 in net, and the Big 12 only has 2. And for me, that's not the fact that the Big 12 is gaming the net, quote unquote. That's more so just looking at it. I mean, there's just legitimately bad teams in the ACC. I mean, obviously, we have talked at length about Louisville. We don't need to pile them on any more than we've done the last couple months here for the purposes of this exercise. But Georgia Tech's sitting there at 12-16 and 4 quad 3 losses. Notre Dame's been playing better of late, but they're still 6 games under 500. They're laying a foundation with Micah Shrewsbury. Boston College, Florida State, Miami, Syracuse. These teams haven't been good this year. I mean, just look at the quad records. I mean, going down the list: 2-5, 2-7, 2-8, 2-7, 1-6, 1-7, 3-6, 0-10. These aren't teams that are winning games against any quality, both in and out of the conference. I get everyone says, the Big 12 is or the ACC's 9-3 against the Big 12, all that stuff. I tried to figure out what the actual games were. I can remember, North Carolina beating Oklahoma on a neutral site, the best team in the ACC beating a middling Big 12 team, Texas surviving Louisville, obviously, and MSG. I couldn't track down all 12 of those games to try to figure those out. But to me, you just have so many teams at the bottom of this conference that are hurting the league more than anything else. That's hurting more than the non-conference scheduling, or more than what Clemson does in a certain year. It's just, you're at a point now with the ACC where you have this bottom that's covering half of the damn league. I mean, it's not like back in the Big East, everyone would talk about when you were coaching in the Big East, there was DePaul Day, and DePaul wasn't good, and Rutgers was really down at that point. But those are only 2-3 teams. I've seen Hall wasn't great at that point in time either. You're talking about out of a 16-team league where you're having 11 NCAA tournament teams and you have 2 or 3 down. That's not a lot. Whereas out of a 15-team league, you have 8 teams that are really, really struggling and not really even threats at this point. Pittsburgh was on the bubble for a little while, but they've lost a couple games out of where they're completely off the bubble. It feels like, to me, it's just, you got to fix that internally if you want the conference to be respected more on a national level, the way it used to be, the way it really should be. And traditionally it is, because the ACC, it's sad watching ACC basketball these days, because it's just a shell of itself right now.
Yeah, you've had coaching changes. You've had the lower, the teams at the bottom are, for no other way to put it, they're rebuilding and trying to figure out who they are. Where you're in the Big 12, you're going to war night in, night out. I mean, every game is a battle. I don't care about what their record is against, other leagues. You can see it. I mean, yes, the quad wins and so on, but you can see you've got a majority of those teams that are capable of making the Final Four. So to talk about, your non-conference schedule and is going to be just loaded as well. I mean, Duke beats Louisville the other night and loses 2 points in the net rankings, by winning by 25. So, you can't, think about that. So, to me, the Big 12 and the ACC, there's a huge gap in as far as the level of overall what you have as far as teams in the Big 12 and what you have in the ACC for sure.
Yeah, you lose in a 6-year span. You lose Rick Pitino, Roy Williams, Coach K, and Jim Boeheim. That's a lot to overcome as a conference. It is. And throw in the fact also that, kind of the new blood carriers of the torch of Virginia, Florida State, and Miami have all really had Virginia and Florida State the last couple years have been down. And Miami this year has been very underwhelming and disappointing. With those 3 schools down, it's like, where are the wins going to come from? Where's the quality in the league? It's just not there right now. But I know the net's not perfect, and there are issues with it. I do think it does favor a little bit, because yes, it caps win margin by 30 points, but there's no cap for efficiency. So I think here's the balance that I think needs to be found. Obviously, if Iowa State beats Texas Corpus Christi by 45 points, that shouldn't waver very much, but it does help you in terms of efficiency numbers, which is part of what goes to the net. But at the same time, if you just say, well, we can't put those in there, UConn blasting Marquette at home by, what was it, 30 a couple weeks ago? That absolutely needs to matter that they won that game by 30. That is completely different than beating a top 5 Marquette team at the time by just 1 or 2 points. So I feel like you need to find a medium there, but I think
I don't know. That's, it's you just the other night, Tennessee and Texas A&M, and Tennessee they're up 30 and they're still attacking and still scoring with 20 something seconds to go. You hope it doesn't get to the point where coaches are just saying, well, it's the net rankings and that's why we had to run up the score. That becomes like AAU pool play where you have to win by a certain number of points and whatnot. So we certainly don't want basketball to turn into that, because that is only, you have coaches and players. We were talking about storming the court, but you have someone dunk a basketball late or go up and score with 10 seconds to go. That'll be a lot worse than storming the court as far as what happens between the teams and the coaches as well.
Yeah, the coaches coach would probably get a lot of heat if a star player gets hurt late in the game when it's already been very well decided. That would not be ideal. So let's do this, Coach. Eric Crawford wrote WDRB a couple days ago after Louisville lost to Duke, basically writing, 14 days. There's 14 days left in the Kenny Payne era, pretty much. And it seems like we're getting towards that end to where pretty much everyone can see the writing on the wall here. Like, look, this isn't going anywhere. It's 12-48 in the last 2 years. You just surpassed 20 losses for the second year in a row, and only the third time in program history. You have the 3 regular season home games left. You have whatever happens in the ACC tournament, but we've almost, and kind of asking 2 questions in one here, it feels like it's the end for KP, which I've been on the record many times. I think, it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, you gotta, win basketball games if you're gonna continue to be the coach. And 12-48 just isn't good enough at Louisville. It's just not. And also from the standpoint of the coaching search, that I feel like we've gotten so numb, and the fan base has gotten so numb that we've like Mick Cronin, for example. Early on, very popular. Cronin, UCLA had some struggles earlier in the year. People jump off the bandwagon. Now I see, Ty Spalding of Cardinal Authority, Cardinal Sports. I don't forget which one he is, but he had a quote.
Authority.
Yeah, Cardinal Authority. Yes, right. But he had a quote talking about how that now Louisville could get around the buyout, all that stuff. And now everyone's back in on Cronin. Obviously, Musselman's had his flirtations. People have said, Nate Oates would listen. All this different stuff that we've done. I'm honestly just kind of tired of it at this point. I'm just kind of tired of everything. I'm just ready for some action to happen on it so that we can move forward here. But just big picture, looking at Louisville, it's been we're very much in the apathy stages of this, aren't we?
Yeah, just being on sports radio here, it's at the point where, fans are apoplectic and the apathy is there. And it's like, it's a shame. And you talked about Coach Payne's record, and there's mitigating factors because the Yum Center with attendance, and then you're talking about concessions, you're talking about parking, you're talking about restaurants, you're talking about downtown. So that's been something that's been discussed as well. But yeah, it's coaches fatigue around here. It's the flavor of the week with names. With all the names you mentioned, look, there's some really good coaches out there. If there was a change to be made, I just don't think that the University of Louisville can just go get one of those up and comers. It's probably got to be a name, because that's just, you might have a diamond in the rough, and just throwing out a name just because I'm friends with him, like a Josh Heird at Indiana State. He's done a marvelous job, and he's gonna get some offers. He's gonna, if they win the conference, for sure. But I think in this situation, Louisville needs to, when that change, and if that change is made, then you're probably going to see one of the names that's been, talked about and been circulating throughout Louisville media. There might be somebody that's not on the radar, but that's had a lot of success as well.
Interesting. I look at it, and because we've had these same 4 or 5 names of Cronin, Musselman, Oates, Jerome Tang, Dusty May kind of get thrown out there.
Yep.
And it's been weird because none of them have had particularly great seasons, which has been kind of funny. I know everyone kind of panicked after Kentucky blew the doors off of Alabama last weekend. Oh, well, Oates can't be the coach anymore. They lost to Kentucky. I was like, well, you didn't realize he had won 3 of the previous 5 against UK if you want to use that.
Right,
reasoning,
Jack.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
but
that's what it's been like, the flavor of the week. If somebody wins, if somebody loses, then they move up and down the board, whether it's Chris Beard from Mark Blankenbanker, or Scott Drew's name is up there too. So yeah, you've just got a bunch of names. But again, I think that the university is going to do their due diligence and might not just be. I think this is an important hire, obviously, for the university. Again, I'll preface it with if and when a change is made, but I think it's going to be. It might not be one of those names, but I'm certainly sure it's going to be somebody that's very big on the college basketball scene.
Yeah, and I think honestly, at a baseline, you can hire almost anyone out there, and they'll give you a baseline that's been better than what it's been the last 2-3 years. Which I know that's not what Louisville fans want. They want to be really, really great, but like I feel like no matter what you do, I can't imagine it getting any worse or staying as bad as it is now. It'll get better no matter what. I feel like,
but I think it's going to be a bigger name because you have to go that route. That's not what I feel. I feel that there's tons of really, really good coaches out there that would do a bang up job. But
and I say that as a positive. Like I say that as no matter who you bring in, I feel like it will at least get better. But and Josh Heird, I like the fact that there's not a clear front runner for Josh Heird, because we look at it. When was the last time Louisville had an actual coaching search? Because this last time it was KP. The time before that, Christy Mack's from Louisville. Of course, Chris Mack's coming, and it was very Chris Mack eccentric. Even when they hired Rick Pitino, it was Tom Jurd seemed very zeroed in on Pitino from the beginning. It's been a very long time, even on the football side. It's been Brom. Each of the last 2 times Louisville's had a coaching search on that end. I think it'll be very refreshing and very good for the program to actually go through and have a coaching search for the first time. I don't remember when they hired Denny Crum. I obviously was not alive at the time, but I could imagine that was an actual search to where it would be something different for Louisville than the athletic director having an immense amount of pressure to hire one specific dude. And I think that'll allow Josh Heird to really go through and vet candidates, interview everyone, and be able to make who he thinks will be the best man to coach the program and have it be his decision, let him own it, instead of it being, someone that everyone's been saying for 3-4 months, this is going to be the dude, like it's been the last couple times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we don't know what's going on behind closed doors. We don't know if Josh Heird has zeroed in on anybody, but yeah, it's this one is not cut and dry as far as who will be the next coach if and when a change is made. What would be
a couple traits, no matter who it is, that you would want the next coach to have?
Just like it really for any program, you want someone that's going to identify his plan and what his plan is. And again, it starts off right away with recruiting, understanding the portal, understanding how to get players here, having those relationships. And then, look, I don't want to just repeat what people say, but it really is the truth. You got to have an identity of what a team is. You can't say, well, this is what this Louisville basketball team is trying to do. You watch Alabama, it's analytics. They're shooting threes. They're getting to the rim. They're defending well. It depends. Last year
Depends
they had
on
a
the
lot
year.
more. They're right. Last year they had pros and they had more length, so it's easier. Now, more of a team concept. They do what they can, but that style of basketball is always going to be exciting. You have a guy, and again, just Mick Cronin. They're going to defend the crap out of you. Every basket, it's going to, they're contesting shots, they're contesting dribbles, they're contesting cuts and passes. For me, I'm a defensive guy. I want someone that's going to say, okay, I think you can get the best of both worlds, play really fast. I'm a big believer in that style of basketball, but you got to recruit to that talent. You got to have a roster construction. You got to understand where you want players from. Whoever comes in here should go to the portal and get at least 2 guys who have played 100 college basketball games, who can be tone setters for this team and understand what it takes to win. And that just doesn't mean in games, every practice, you got to have guys that understand, how to bring it day in, day out. For young guys to say, oh, well, shit, I've got to bring it. If I don't, I'm in trouble here because I'm not going to play. So for me, having a defensive mindset, it's tough for me sometimes to when we break down these games and just see some of the lapses on the defensive end. And then offensively, play fast, but you got to build your roster to that. And you've got to understand now, all right, hey, if we got guards, we're going to attack and we're going to press and we're going to do all those type of things. So one of the reasons Coach Pitino hired me, that style, pressing and then really being efficient offensively, that's a nice formula for successful basketball.
Yeah, I know Louisville fans definitely love full court pressure too. I mean, that's something that, I obviously, I grew up watching the Pitino teams doing that and Denny Crum before then. That's been something that's.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers of the Field of 68 as we all get ready for the best month of the year, March Madness. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, you can use the bonus code FIELD150 and you will get $150 in free bets on your first wager with BetMGM, regardless of whether or not you win that first bet. Here's the best part. All you need to do is deposit and bet $5 of your hard-earned money. This is how you make it work. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD150. That's FIELD150. Deposit at least $5 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $150 in bonus bets regardless of the outcome of your bet. Just make sure you use that bonus code FIELD150 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available in one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient when I have to go cover games in Philly or New York, which happens quite a bit. When you cross state borders, you just log into your existing account and fire away. You don't have to create a new account in each state. It's easy, it's simple, and it's clean. And most importantly, we have some fun stuff coming up for the conference tournaments and for the NCAA tournament. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boost, and my personal favorite, a nice little parlay boost here and there. So download the BetMGM app and sign up today. Big news, guys. I am thrilled to announce that we have partnered with Autograph, a company founded by the GOAT himself, Tom Brady. The Autograph fandom app gives you access to the best college hoops content, fan contests, and exclusive rewards like discounted tickets, all for doing the things that diehard fans like you already do, following your favorite team in the news and listening to podcasts just like this one. When Tom, and yes, I am calling him Tom, we're on a first name basis these days, co-founded Autograph, he had one mission in mind: change the fan experience for the better. It works like this. You get all of your college hoops content you want in one place. You get articles from your favorite writers, pods from your favorite hosts, contests from your favorite creators, all on the feeds and the sites that you already enjoy. But instead of having to go to all these different places, it all comes to you in one spot, the Autograph fandom app. But here's the best part. The more content that you consume, the higher you rank in the app. As you consider the level up in status on the app, you can unlock unique rewards curated exclusively for you. So download the free Autograph app in the App Store and use the referral code F68, that's F68, or tap in at the link in the description below or in the podcast app of your choosing to start earning points for doing something as normal as listening to this very podcast.
this is kind of off topic, but why do you think that full court pressure has kind of fallen out of flavor for a lot of coaches? Is it just the hand checking rules that were brought on up a couple years ago, or I guess at this point 8-9 years ago? I just feel like even you watch St. John's. I mean, Rick, Coach Pitino doesn't press like he used to. I mean, you just don't see Shaka Smart Marquette doesn't press like he used to at VCU. You just don't see it nearly as much as we did even, 10, 12 years ago.
I think it's cyclical, but I also think, Coach Pitino brought in 11 guys and he understands, they're playing their matchup zone. They'll press, they'll still extend their defense. Their pickup points are still high, but you just have a bunch of new guys that understand schematically, having worked for Coach Pitino and for myself teaching that. Yeah, it's going to take time. And then honestly, some of the blue bloods and the high majors, you get players that haven't been asked to defend at that level. And now you're asking them to learn how to do it, sustain it full court in addition to their offense. That's an issue. Teams like Marquette, yeah, Shaka was, that was always havoc was his thing. But he also understands like the players he has. They've had some injuries, but and don't let me butcher this name, Jack. Is Koenig the Ty-Laur Koenig?
Tyler Kolek.
All right. Then
yeah, the point guard,
bad.
Yeah.
He's a good angle defender. He's good in the half court. He's very crafty, but you might wear him out. You might get him in foul trouble and so on. So, it depends. I do believe it's cyclical. Sometimes you recruit and you can bring in some other guys that can play that way. So I don't think it's dead and gone, to quote T.I. So I think that we have a chance to see a lot more pressure. I just think it'll fluctuate.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, one thing Marquette especially does really well these days is they still pressure the ball a lot and heat you up in the half court. And I think that's kind of where it's gone to more instead of picking up full 94 feet. It's let's make you as uncomfortable as we possibly can in the half court, try to push the offense out. All those things we have talked about a lot. I mean, and one of the things you said, like Alabama, it's very. I would have loved to have seen this Alabama team if Charles Bediako came back, because that was a very big piece for them defensively last year. And he kind of unexpectedly turned pro after last season. And they really, really miss his rim protection and
that was huge.
Everything he does on the defensive end. And I wonder, because they're so good offensively, if they had that stabilizing force down low, how much better that would make them be, because they can't defend anyone.
Right. I mean, they understand who they are. They're going to it's almost a la Kentucky. We're just going to get out and go and we're going to outscore you. And for everybody to poo-poo it and say, well, you can't win the tournament that way. That's not the case. You really want to be hot and playing well offensively and be good enough to get stops, critical stops when you need it. But you better make sure your offense is in gear and going. You saw it last year with Connecticut. They were just so consistent offensively. Shot the ball well, high percentage shots, good field goal percentage. I mean, that's a formula for the NCAA tournament for sure.
Yeah, and absolutely. You think of Miami last year as well. The run they made,
exactly.
It was all they upset Houston just because they were able to spread the floor, take advantage of Houston's trapping, be able to score at a very high rate for 40 minutes and be able to really kind of blow out Houston. I mean, Villanova back in 2016, 2018 won 2 national titles with offense. I mean, you got to be good enough on the defensive end. But I feel like the old adage of defense wins championships. Yes, you need the defense. You need to go a long way. But a lot of times the great offense trumps the great defense, especially with how the rules are set up these days in basketball, to where and it's a lot more entertaining to watch too than watching Virginia beat Wake Forest 49-47, for example, a couple of weeks ago. Kentucky in that, I don't know if you saw this, Kentucky in that game against Alabama, which first of all, don't run with Kentucky if you want a chance to beat Kentucky. You're just not going to win at that point. Even when Alabama's the best offense in the sport, they just don't have the dudes. Nobody has the pure talent, I think, to be able to run an up and down, up tempo game with Kentucky this year. You're just not going to win, especially if Kentucky's able to put together an 8 to 10, 12 minute heck against Bama. They put together probably a 15-minute stretch of actual good defense, but if they're able to put together an 8 to 10 minute stretch of defense, Kentucky's going to win most of the games they play. But especially if you're going up tempo, you increase possessions. I just don't see how anyone beats that team when they're hitting shots. And they're normally hitting shots. I mean, obviously they still have the defensive struggles, but to me, where I see they have a very high variance on how far they can go in March this month. But to me, it all comes down to you got to slow the game down, muck it up, and really try to physically take it to them. You're not going to win an up and down game against Kentucky. They're just that they're so good at that style of a game.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, what you're saying, how fast they play, how they spread the floor, really, if they're in a groove and the way they can attack you and get paint touches and kick and the depth they have, yeah, it's going to be tough. I think they're going to do some damage in the NCAA tournament for sure. I'm a fan of how they're playing. I know no one wants to see them. Nobody wants to play a team like that.
Right. I mean, and they're going to be really, really fun to watch. I guess one other thing is like Houston's made their big push now to where everyone's kind of, argued for the past couple months of, UConn, Purdue. It's like, hey guys, we're 24-3 in the best conference in the country. Maybe someone should be talking about us. They're not number one in the AP poll. They had that great game against Baylor last Saturday. They followed that up or they had a home win over Iowa State before that. Yep. They followed up with a win over Cincinnati on the road this past weekend. Do you think on the other end, we were just talking about it. I mean, I love Jamal Shead. He is arguably the best point guard in the country. He is something else. He is tough as nails. He's incredible to watch. LJ Cryer, the Baylor transfer. Obviously, Emmanuel Sharp has come on to kind of give him a three-headed monster in the backcourt there. I'm ready to buy in. Like, I picked them actually to win. They were my preseason national title pick, so I guess I was always bought in. But
look at you.
But I think I don't know if they'll win the whole thing, but I'm able to trust them now offensively to where I think they can do enough most games to where if they face a high-power offense, they can do enough on the offensive end to where they can win with that defense of theirs, which is the best in the country at this point.
That's a good point by you. Trust. I trust them offensively this year. In the past, it was like, all right, we're just going to bully you to death and just out rebound and get every offensive rebound. And when that doesn't happen, they weren't anemic. Scoring at a clip, right? They weren't scoring at a clip that you needed to do to win some of these games. So for this year, though, I would think I'm with you. I buy stock on having watched them play quite a few games. I really like that team. They're still defending at such a high level, but they can score that, and keep up with some of those teams. So yeah, you might be spot on with your prediction.
Yeah, I'm not right very often, and I'm sure I won't be again this year. But you know what? We give it a shot. I mean, to be fair, I also had Michigan State and Arkansas in my preseason Final Four.
Well,
so
don't mention
that's
that,
not
Jack.
as great.
Jack, no one's going to go back. You just talk about Houston.
Yeah,
no one's fact checking right now, so you're fine. You should have just talked about Houston. You should have outed yourself.
Hey, I'm transparent. I'll tell you when I'm right. I'll tell you when I'm wrong. I'll own up to it. That's what because at the end of the day, we're all just kind of having fun. But last thing before we get here, a couple fun ones this weekend. I mean, I guess I'm sorry. I know people. This is technically a Louisville podcast, and we talk about the coaching search stuff. I mean, if you want anything on the actual Louisville Duke game, I mean, Louisville was down 4 at the 8-minute timeout, and they gave up a 9-0 run where they gave up an offensive rebound to pull up 3, and then, just it was bad. Never double digits after that. I fought so hard all year, Coach. Like he's like, I got into this to talk about the games, and I want to talk about the games, but I don't think there's much of an appetite for it at this stage, to be honest. And it's hard to watch at this point. It just is. I mean, I know that's what we've done most of the years, really react to the games. And that's what at my core, what I want to do, especially when it comes to this podcast and everything. But at some point, we made it to March 1st before I waved the white flag on it. And I really have waved the white flag on it at this point. And that's better than what I thought I'd do when we were doing our first episode and they had just lost to Kentucky Wesleyan. I was like, holy crap, how are we going to talk about everything?
We made it. But we did
pretty good on that front. But, I would say if Louisville ends up making some sort of run, this is a Louisville podcast. We're going to talk about Louisville as we see fit. But I think the bigger picture will probably dominate this month, as well as as the national conference. We'll mix in a little bit more national stuff. I feel like just because it's March Madness, there's the brackets, there's all that stuff. And damn it, I would not look at myself in the eye straight if I did any type of basketball podcast and didn't talk about the NCAA tournament, no matter what. So we'll have fun with that. But before we get out of here, Coach, let's just run through a few of these games on Saturday. Obviously Louisville, Syracuse, but I mean Marquette at Creighton, I am fascinated by two of the best offenses in the country. How Creighton was. Did Creighton win the game in Marquette? I know it went to overtime, went down to the wire. I'm trying to remember. It was a really good game. I'm looking it up real quick.
Jack, you're supposed to have those numbers for me.
I know. Marquette won 72-67. That's what it was. It was a really, really good game.
And you see the score there. Like both teams you mentioned about Marquette, they're still going to be very good in the half court defensively. Creighton, their team defense, their understanding, their coverage on ball screens, the way they're connected, they're better than people think from that standpoint. And even look, their game against St. John's, you just see it late, just how proficient offensively they weren't making shots, but they run some really good stuff. That's a heck of a game, and two teams that could make a long run, into this tournament for sure. Yeah,
and St. John's did a great thing against Creighton in that game, and they really, really attacked that drop coverage that Creighton plays, and they did something that almost nobody does against Creighton. I mean, Ryan Kalkbrenner's back-to-back Big East Player of the Year, first guy since Patrick Ewing to do that. So that's pretty hard to do, but they were able to take him out of that drop coverage where he started hedging. And when they were in drop coverage, Zanis Jenkins, Jordan Dingle, those guards were hitting mid-range jumpers.
Yeah,
when they
hedged it,
they were able to get all the way to the rim. I think that's the big Achilles heel of a team like that. When you have guards that can hit that pull-up jumper. I know that's very against modern basketball and analytics, all that stuff, but sometimes the best offense you can get is just what the defense gives you. And you got to take what they give you. If they're giving you an easy step in 12, 15 footer, and you have a guy like Zanis Jenkins or Marquette this weekend with Tyler Kolek, Cam Jones, you'd be wise to take it and hit that at a 50-60% clip like St. John's did last weekend. And that might be the next evolution back towards the mid-range game, to where everyone, so focused on trying to take away the three, trying to take away, dunks and layups, so where it's like, oh yeah, if I'm wide open from 10 feet, I'm going to hit this shot more often than not.
You'd be surprised how many teams change what they do come NCAA tournament time. So if they know a team is going to try and attack you through the middle and try and look for mid-range shots, whether it's, downing on the side, whether it's, just more of a flat corral than just a drop. There's different little things that teams will do come NCAA tournament to make you more left-handed and not as comfortable in what you're seeing on film. They'll change some things up. I mean, that just happens. We would do that at Louisville, but most teams will do that. They'll, they're still going to be who they are, but just little wrinkles that might take something away and might make you think about what you're doing. And that does affect you offensively.
Would you guys save stuff for the NCAA tournament specifically to try to keep it off tape? Or
we really wouldn't save anything. And there's no secrets. It's like, but what you do is you work on things. You really, the film study by all these coaches come tournament time. I remember just even Draymond Green would always go 2 hard dribbles to his left and cross over. And we would talk about that. Every time he's going left, he's crossing back over, spinning. And we actually got either a steal or a deflection on one of those moves. So really, it's a lot of film study and then saying, okay, you're not really saving anything, Jack, but you're saying, all right, you've got to be confident enough in what your team does and to adapt and maybe adjust something, just a little wrinkle, and say, okay, this might work, and we're going to try this out, and so on. Just like we did against Florida. We were in our matchup zone and we switched to man just because of how much time they had spent attacking that zone. So really we had switched, but it really isn't things that you're going to save. I do remember, and again, Rick Majerus would go diamond and he went diamond and 2 against Arizona. And he was like, I have no idea if this is going to work. I'm going to give it a shot. So I don't think it's something you save. It's something that maybe you say, okay, we're going to try this formula and see if it works. Can't live in your fears when you're coaching the NCAA tournament.
That's fair. That's very fair. I also want to ask, since you brought it up, that Michigan State game in 2012 held them to what, 44 points?
Mm-hmm.
Number one seed. What was, I mean, obviously you brought up with Draymond Green, but what was the defensive game plan to just suffocate them the way you guys were able to in that game?
I honestly look, our guys were just you had point pressure when you had those guards that we did that just were so pesky and made things so difficult. And honestly, it was just a great team effort. Now you're asking me to remember something from a lot of details from 10 years ago. I'm getting
you
older.
started
Jack.
it. You started it when
I
you gave me
did.
the Draymond
I
Green
did.
detail right off the
But
bat.
yeah, I do remember that part. But honestly, I can tell you that I don't remember anything that was okay. We've got to do this, do that. We were who we were, and the way we got after it was just incredible. I think the score of the half was like 18-14, if I'm not mistaken. I think Jared Swapshire hit a shot like at the buzzer at the end of the half, and it was like a 18-14 2016 game, something like that. It's
Gorgie
crazy.
Zhang hit his first career 3 in that game.
Yeah.
Foretelling a world where he became a 45% 3-point shooter in the NBA a couple years ago, which is just crazy. But let me ask you this on a broader sense with Rick Pitino. What, or I guess makes, since he's still obviously coaching at St. John's, but everyone always talked about the Sweet 16 record and how dominant he was when you would give him a week to prepare. What made him so good in those spots with the preparation and the film study, and I'm sure everything that he did to prepare a team to have so much success in that setting on one of the biggest stages that you can walk into?
Well, I think he'd be the first to say just putting his staff together, because you had so many people who are just grinding and just looking for every detail. It's like, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. So, Coach Pitino would watch a lot of film, but the amount of time and prep that we would do with film study, weren't a big paper scout team. We would watch so much film, do it on the floor, show it, and just drive that point home. Every time they're on the right side, here comes a step-up screen. They've set 22 step-up screens on the right side. You're doing that for 4 or 5 days. How many times? 22. We'll show them film. We'll show all 22 step-up screens. We'll go over it. What's going to happen if he gets the ball here on this? Here comes their rescreening. Here comes a step-up screen. So whatever it was, just drilling those points home. I'm not saying other programs don't do it, but the amount of time that we would spend as coaches just to understand those details. And, and I brought that with me wherever I've been.
Before we get out of here, we kind of got off topic there, but a couple more games I wanted to go through real quick.
Okay.
We got Kansas at Baylor. Kansas has not been the same team since Kevin McCullers had that bone bruise issue, to where he played in the Houston game, but he's missed, I think, 4 of his last 5, 6 of his last 7, something like that. How worried are you about Kansas? And they have a really tough test going into Baylor, a team that seems to be, even though they lost that Houston game, seems to be playing better basketball here as we get down towards the late stages of the season.
Yeah, they played great against TCU. I watched that game. Yeah. They were really good. Kansas, I still think they're good enough to make the Final Four. I think they when you have Dickerson, you have some of the pieces around him. I'm not overly concerned. I think they're Kansas. They'll
the moment you doubt Bill Self is the moment you're wrong.
Exactly right. So come the Big 12 tournament, they're going to be just fine. And then in the tournament, they'll be in the Sweet 16. And then we'll see where they go from there. I have no doubts. I don't.
Yep. Kansas has lost.
That's the easiest way to put it, Jack.
Yeah.
Kansas is Kansas.
Yep. I mean, they've lost 1 non-conference game, or I guess 2 non-conference games the last 2 years. One of them came to Purdue, or rather, one of them came to Marquette, because Marquette beat Kansas in Maui, and then Purdue beat Marquette in the championship. Right. And the other one was Arkansas in last year's round of 32, the NCAA tournament. Of course, if you remember, Bill Self didn't coach in that game because he had heart issues. So they've lost 1 Bill Self coach game in the non-conference.
They were up at the half and they had control of that game. Yeah. And they just, it just got away from them late. And
I will say they do need to get McCullough back, though, because he was playing at a first-team All-American level most of the year, and he's just does so much for them. He completes that backcourt defensively with DeJuan Harris. I would argue that's the best defensive backcourt in college basketball. Well, the best tandem anyways, and he was shooting the ball a lot better this year. He creates plays for himself, for others. He rebounds the ball well. He is a do-everything type guard for them. And if they're going to have any sort of run to make, they need to get him back healthy and playing the way he was early this year. Baylor's defense, I think, has stepped up the last couple weeks. They've really kind of figured things out on that end. I feel like
they've changed up their defense.
They're playing more zone now.
Yeah, they are playing more zone. And I remember even during the broadcast, we're talking about, like, Davion Mitchell told Coach Drew, we are playing man. That's who we are. And they stayed with it throughout their championship run. And as we both know, Coach Drew was a big zone guy to start. He was. And so, like, he's mixing it up, and their zone, they're it doesn't matter what defense you play. People have to understand you have to do it hard. You have to do it right. Guys have to understand when the zone slides, where they are, and the effort that you have to have on every single play. And you see that from Baylor. And, to hold a TCU team to 42 points, I mean, yeah, they're good defensively. Their freshmen are playing really well. They're another team that I won't count out.
Yeah, we talked about them a little bit earlier, but Tennessee and Alabama, the SEC regular season title will essentially get decided in Tuscaloosa on Saturday night. There, I'm fighting this urge, Coach, because every year I fade Rick Barnes in the NCAA tournament, and that's nothing against him personally, but there's the track record there. That's what I'll leave it out.
He's the anti-Bill Self, right? So,
yes.
And you would say this Tennessee team has it all. This is the team that can make a deep run. And those demons are there for him too. You think he's not aware of that?
Yeah.
And so you just kind of want to, as a coach, you kind of want to, like, distance that and just really focus and say, hey, this is a new year. Nothing, that doesn't matter, and so on, because that team is really good. And if they slip up this year, I mean, this is as good a year as any for him to make his run to the Final Four. I mean, look, if you were to say, look, Tennessee is going to be in the Final Four, I wouldn't argue that. But yeah, they've got to win.
Yeah. And the difference is they got Dalton Gannett, who
he is.
I'm sure he saw that game against Auburn on Tuesday night, where
he's special. Yeah,
he's incredible. I mean, what was it? 25 points in the last 12 minutes in that game after it looked like
he's averaging 20 for the year, and he just does so many things, and the way they rebound the basketball and how physical they are, and now they have. This isn't where in those teams were just so physical. They beat you up like they did last year, the Duke, but sometimes that scoring prowess wasn't there. This year they have some guys that can really make some shots and can get to the rim. He can create. So, like, they've got the pieces. This is definitely, and that's we'll see what happens with this year's squad for sure.
Yeah, and he's really Connect really has let guys like Vescovy and Zakai Ziegler and Josiah Jordan James really play their more natural secondary scoring roles a lot better, instead of putting all the pressure on those dudes to go out and score 18, 20, 22 a night, needing one of those guys to do it. Instead, Connect, you can do your thing and we can fill in the gaps, and we're still going to punch you in the mouth defensively as well. Connect's improved on that end too throughout the year too, because he wasn't known as much of a defender going into the year, and he's really gotten better at that end. Where I think Tennessee's going to go in and win that game. I mean, if Alabama comes in, hits 18 threes and drops 95 points, no one would really be that stunned, let's be honest, because of how that offense goes. But I trust. I mean, Tennessee just put 92 up on an Auburn team that's top 5 in the country.
Great point
defensively.
That you made.
They can score too.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like you talked about, Alabama puts up 95. It's not past this Tennessee team to put up 96. So this is the type of team this year that if you tell me someone's going to score 95, they're done. But this year, this team is capable of making those type of offensive spurts and runs that can keep them in those type of games.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at, year over year, the Tennessee-Auburn games in Knoxville. Last year, what was the game was in the 40s. It was one of the worst games, one of the worst close games you will ever watch. And this year, 92-84, both teams going up and down. And again, beating really, really good defenses on the offensive end. Both those teams defend the crap out of the ball. And just so much fun to watch. I mean, it's going to be a loaded weekend in college hoops. It's going to be an incredible month in the sport. Best month of the year, March Madness. We'll be talking about it. And, of course, the Louisville coaching search and all that stuff as it potentially, maybe inevitably develops here in the next few weeks as well. For Mark Lieberman, I'm Jack Grossman. We'll catch you next.